right, guys, we asked it on Facebook and Instagram, got a bunch of different responses. I wanted to see if you could figure out what we were going to make with this tortilla press. Somebody even said tortillas. Hey, guess what? You got that right. But what are we going to do with them? Well, I'm about to show you how to make... Okay, so enough fooling around. We're making enchiladas. I love enchiladas. We've been making them in our house for probably 10 years plus. And several years ago, we actually learned how to make homemade tortillas on a trip to San Diego. So it kind of comes together that we can actually really make this stuff from scratch and super easy. The reason why I want to highlight the tortilla press now is because actually there's a bonus portion after this episode that will show you how to make them yourself. So if you're not interested in that, you want to buy the ones out of the store, not a problem. We're going to make the enchiladas with our homemade ones, but I'm going to show you a couple of the differences between the two. And maybe by the time we're done, you're like, heck, let me give it a stab. But in the meanwhile, let's get some enchiladas going, all right? Okay, so you can't have enchiladas without enchilada sauce. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. So we're going to start with about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And you might be thinking, hey, why don't I just go buy a can of enchilada sauce? Well, this is homemade easy. Why would I let you off the hook by going out and buying a big old can of enchilada sauce? Because that's the flavor that's going to go everywhere. So let's make something that you can actually take a little pride in. And it's really not that hard, I promise you. The end result, you're going to be able to taste everything that goes into it. And I think that's a very important part. So if you watched our last episode, we made Sunday sauce. Got 2 cups of it over here. We're going to use that for something in just a little bit. If you need to go buy a commercial tomato sauce, just buy one that's not made with, you know, a bunch of garlic or arrabbiata or a vodka sauce or anything like that, because we don't want anything other than just the tomato and vegetable flavor that comes from that sauce. So as we're warming up our oil, we're going to prepare to put in flour and chili powder. So it's 3 tablespoons each. And normally if you're making a roux, you're not adding any spices to it. You're just putting in the flour with the oil, stirring it around, browning it a little bit. But what we're trying to do is toast the flavor of the chili powder. Get it to wake up a little bit more with the browning rather than just from the cooking in the enchilada sauce. Then off to the side here, we have 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of smoked paprika. Because the turkey is smoked, I want a little more smoky flavor to come through in the sauce as well. And then of course we have 1 tablespoon of cumin. So this is all going to go together with the sauce and 1 cup of chicken stock in a bowl off to the side while we're warming up our roux. You can hear a little sizzle. I'm going to knock that down just a tiny bit. I'm going to use a whisk to get it started. So the fat to flour ratio is pretty much a 50-50. The chili powder is kind of the variable in that, but that's okay. I just knocked it down to low, get a nice simmer going. Make sure you don't allow it to burn. We're gonna get our liquid ready to go in. I'm gonna pull that off the heat for a minute, and the reason is you can go too far too fast and get a burnt flour flavor going on. So I've got it exactly where I want it. Off you go. We're gonna go ahead and put in our 2 cups of tomato sauce. Yummy. Telling you, if you didn't watch that last episode and make this sauce yourself, you are missing out. Okay, so I've got 1 1/4 cups of chicken stock over here. And the reason why I went 1 1/4 is because we're gonna be heating up the turkey in a little bit and I wanna have something to go in there. So I'm gonna put in 1 cup in here. Make sure I get that stirring around. And then this way I have a 1/4 cup to go in with the turkey. Okay, move you there. Now we're going to put in all of our spices. And the idea is I want everything fully incorporated before it goes in the pot. This way, when we start stirring it, everything is married together nicely. Okay, bring this back over. We're going to go with a medium low. Oh, buddy. And then we need to get whisking. But I don't want any of that left behind. So this is gonna get thick quick. So just get whisking. And then once we get a low simmer, we're just gonna let it hang out and do its thing while we get some other stuff going. So you can see all the specks in there of all the delicious spices we've added. Plus, of course, we have that chili powder in there with the roux. So as we come up to a simmer, we're gonna go ahead and just kind of keep an eye on it, keep whisking it, and then drop it down to super low and keep it cooking. All right, so let's talk turkey, and I mean it, turkey. If you remember, right after Thanksgiving, I said, save me some dark meat. I've got white meat, dark meat, and all kinds of stuff in there, but the idea that I wanted to leave with you is that you don't just have to make turkey soup or turkey pot pie or turkey salad. Kind of goes along with this. If you buy one of these rotisserie chickens at the grocery store or the big warehouse store, and you only use a half of it or a quarter of it, what do you do with the rest? I mean, there's only so many times you can make the same thing over and over. So enchiladas are a great way to use turkey or chicken or pot roast or pork roast. All right, so I've got some minced shallots. I'm gonna go ahead and dice up the turkey. This is the smoked turkey, if you remember from Thanksgiving, so it's got a lot of flavor and aroma already. But we are gonna heat it up in a pan and try to make sure that it's very moist when it goes inside that enchilada, because as it cooks in there with the cheese, we really don't want it to get tough and really just kind of make for a bad dish and it tastes like leftover. We want it to taste like we intentionally made a turkey enchilada for the people that are coming over. And this time of year, there's a lot of people coming over. So wouldn't this be great to have on a Sunday afternoon, maybe with a football game on, and you can go, here you go, I made you some enchiladas, and they have no idea that this is just Thanksgiving leftovers. Shh. Okay, I've got the burner on medium. I've put 2 tablespoons of butter in here, and yes, that's not the way I normally do things. But the idea behind it is we've got 50% dark meat, 50% white meat. The dark meat holds some fat, it's got some flavor. Obviously, it's gonna taste great when it warms up. The white meat never really holds up that well, and so we want to add a little bit more moisture to it, which is where the chicken stock's going to come in. But butter is going to give it a nice fatty flavor as well, instead of just the olive oil. So when we sweat the shallots and then they kind of go in with this turkey, the turkey is really going to start to soak up a lot more of that flavor, especially in the white meat. So when you take a bite, you really don't care which meat's there. It's going to taste absolutely delicious. So we're going to go ahead and get this butter melted. We're going to add the shallots. We're going to add the turkey. We're gonna add some chicken stock, get a nice saute, turn it off, and then we're gonna be in business. We're gonna have some cool enchiladas here in just a second. Butter has melted. Shallots go in. And instead of adding salt, pepper, garlic, and a bunch of other stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm actually gonna use some adobo seasoning now because it is just such a classic flavor. And I really, really want it to go and get everywhere in the filling. We're gonna sweat these down a little bit. I want them to get nice and translucent. I'm not going for browning. I'm not going for anything like that. We want the turkey and the cheese and the shallots to all be nice and soft and delicious on the inside. I don't want you to really have to chew through something that's a little bit too firm or too browned. We're about translucent here. I'm gonna go ahead. 4 cups of turkey. Again, as I mentioned, it's half dark meat, half white meat. It's all cubed up. So we've just got very easy to cut through pieces. So once you do have your rolled enchilada, you don't have to worry about sawing through it with a knife. Everything's just gonna cut and just be a perfect bite. So that's a very, very important thing, the perfect bite. Okay, I've got my 1/4 cup of chicken stock. If you look, you can actually see that you don't have that butter in the bottom of the pan anymore. You can tell that there's still a fat in there, but the white meat has actually absorbed all of it, which is really good because now we know that it's gonna have a lot of flavor and a lot of moisture and a little bit of fat. So we're gonna go ahead and put this 1/4 cup in, and you'll be shocked how much more of this gets soaked up in there. But the last thing you want is dry meat on the inside of your enchilada. That would not go over well. We're gonna go ahead and let this simmer for just a little bit, put a lid on, and then we're gonna cut the heat. The last thing you wanna try and do is put together an enchilada with extremely hot filling that you can't even touch. It's gonna make that a really hard process. All right, so I've got my enchilada sauce done. I've got my meat and shallots over here cooling down a little bit so we can handle them. We're gonna add cheese to the filling, so let's talk cheese. So I've got some of our other ingredients up here. So on the board, I've got the Tortilla cheese, which is named after the city in Mexico that it was made. When you smell it, it's really got a very pungent smell, kind of between like a goat cheese and a provolone. And it always reminds me that Mexican cuisine and Italian cuisine really do kind of bounce off each other a little bit. I know that's not exact, but tomatoes and pasta and cheese and the way that a lot of things are really crafted similarly. So this one always reminds me of goat cheese because of the way that it crumbles. And we're gonna use it on top as a finisher. But the deliciousness, oh my gosh, it's salty. It's bright and briny. Absolutely love it. On the other end of the spectrum, Monterey Jack. Everybody and their brother knows Monterey Jack. Very soft cheese, doesn't really carry a lot of character or flavor through, but it melts really well. It's great for things like nachos and tacos. Still chewing on that other cheese, love it. So you know I have an aversion to buying pre-shredded cheese. If you were ever going to do that, this would probably be one of the few recipes you could. But I'm gonna cut some of this into blocks to go on the inside so it melts into big pieces to wrap around the turkey instead of just a shred. I'm gonna shred some to go on top of the enchiladas in the oven. So we're really gonna have cheese 3 ways in here, which is gonna be fun because who doesn't love cheese? So now I've got tortillas. And if you look at these, you're like, Dude, those totally don't look like you just made them. You're right, I didn't. These are out of a package. And if you look, I mean, the effort it takes to pull these apart is why you have to soak them in enchilada sauce to use them. So we're just gonna throw that one off to the side. Cut them up, make tortilla chips, 350, 355 degrees, just put them in the oil, get them nice and golden brown. You know what? Don't throw them away, just don't buy them again. All right, you're over here. So instead, what we have are tortillas that I made. And if you watch the extended portion of the video, you'll notice that there's steam on the inside, which is why this paper towel is there. So when we go to use fresh tortillas, flip it over, pull off the paper towel, because this was the first one that was done. So it is the most pliable and readiest for what we're about to do. I'm gonna pull one of these over here real quick. You can see they're about the same size, they're about the same color. The texture and the flavor of what's in this hand versus what's in this hand is the difference between homemade easy and I don't want to eat it. So I promise you, if you try to make homemade tortillas, you will have some fun, you will make some mistakes, but everything you do is edible. In fact, look how little effort that took. Somebody's not getting an enchilada because I just ate this. Welcome back, we missed you. Okay, so really, I kind of turned the camera off and did some other stuff while you were away, but it's okay. So what I've got here is my turkey and cheese put together. So I've cubed up the cheese, as you can tell, to roughly match the turkey sizes. So 2 parts turkey to 1 part cheese means about 4 cups of turkey, so about 2 cups of cheese. The turkey mixture is cooled off quite a bit, so I've mixed it in the bowl. It is softening the cheese a little, and that's totally okay. It's just gonna help with the cook time. Speaking of cook time, oven's on 350, preheating, getting ready to put our enchiladas in there. Looking forward to that. I'm also preheating our little griddle. So if you watch the extra segment at the end, we're gonna use this in a big way, but I like to introduce kitchen electrics just so that you have an idea of some different things you can get. Do you like to make grilled cheese sandwiches, pancakes, bacon, omelets, all kinds of things you could do on here. Now, omelet's a little harder unless you have an omelet mold, but the idea is this is one nice large surface that I'm preheating to 350 degrees, and I can heat up multiple tortillas at once. If these were store-bought tortillas, they say on the package you could just throw them in the microwave. I'm gonna warm them up on the griddle because that's how I would do it if I was making this for my friends and family. And since these were actually cooked on this exact same griddle, why wouldn't I do it? So we're gonna let this warm up. I'm gonna go ahead and start getting these tortillas out. Pull that off. Oh my gosh, these things are gorgeous. And just start laying these out on here. They're still a little bit warm from being made, so really they don't need much. But what I'm trying to do is just make sure that they're as soft and pliable as they can be when I get there. Now, if you remember, I tore one apart and tasted it. So if somebody's not getting an enchilada, I'm gonna make some room on here for the 7th one, and we'll come right back when we're ready to roll them up. Okay, so there's a lot going on in front of me, as you can tell. So I've got my cheese to go on top after I sauce them. I've got my mixture to go inside. I've got a little area to roll them. I've got the tortillas fresh off of the griddle. I've got a pan ready for the tortillas to go in once they're rolled. I've sauced the bottom because this is how you make enchiladas. But one of the reasons for it is so that that sauce soaks up into the bottom portion of the rolled enchilada. You don't want the top to be all nice and soft and have the bottom get kind of tough because the oven kind of cooks it and makes it a little bit more bronze or caramelizes it more than the rest of it. We want the sauce to soak into it and make it super, super luscious. As you can hear, the oven's heated up to 350, so it is really game time. Like, it's all coming together perfectly. I've got the rest of the sauce up front here, ready to go on top. So we're gonna go ahead and get rolling. So I'm gonna mix it around a little bit because, as I mentioned, the cheese was warming up a little bit. So I wanna make sure I give myself a very similar mix in the middle of all of these. You don't want one where the cheese got cold and one where it's melting, because then it's gonna ooze out the side of one and not the other. And let me move this back here real quick. So I've got about 2 tablespoons of mixture here in the middle. And then all I'm doing is rolling it up, kind of protect the ends a little bit, and place it down. If something falls out, we just tuck it back in. All right, does that make sense? Cool. So as I roll, watch with me here. So my index and middle fingers are on the tortilla, and then my other 2 fingers, ring and pinky, are kind of on the edge holding everything inside. So when I pull it up off the board, the seam is right here, which is going down, and the ends are held closed by my other 2 fingers. And then just set it down. Okay, so the last one in always wants to be the ornery one. If need be, just turn it and face the seam opening end back towards the other one so it can't lift. They're all staying in place, which makes me very happy. So now, we're just gonna go ahead and drape them with some sauce. All right, we are all sauced up. Go a little heavy-handed if you want to. What we don't want is a lot of exposed tortilla because it's gonna get crunchy, and what we're going for is soft and delicious. Then I've got all of my Monterey Jack cheese here. Do not be bashful. This stuff melts great. It's gonna taste great. So there you have it, all cheesed up, ready to go. We're gonna put them in the oven for 18 to 20 minutes at 350, so we'll check them at 18. I want melted cheese. I do not want browned cheese, because again, the whole theme of this is soft and delicious. So the tortillas are fresh and soft. The turkey has been cooked and it is nice and soft. The cheese on the inside is already warm from the turkey and it's gonna melt, which makes it soft. So you kind of see where I'm going. Now you could always finish this with a nice bright, sharp pico de gallo, maybe fry up some of those store-bought tortilla chips to actually make a chip. You could do a lot of different things, but at the end, what we're gonna do is present this with that wonderful crumbled cheese on top and a nice Southwest rice to just make a really nice meal that's gonna have some fun character and flavor. And you'll see it on the plate here in just a few minutes. Fresh out of the oven. Look at that cheese just running down the sides. Oh, that is pretty. All right, y'all. Does it look as good to you as it does to me? Because this is stinking crazy. I mean, that cheese is melted all over the place. The sauce is kind of spread out a little bit, which means it's gotten into everything. I've got a nice Southwest rice over here. We're gonna go ahead, see if we get one of these out without making a big old mess. It's the only downside to a casserole dish dinner. Come on, baby. Nice. Pop you on there. Beautiful. All right. Then you hit it with a little bit of cilantro for color. And some of that beautiful cotija cheese. All right, guys. What do you think? I think it looks pretty stinking good. So this is a beautiful plate. I've put a little bit of green on there, as you saw with the cilantro, and then the cotija cheese, so we've actually hit all the colors of the Mexican flag. How cool is that? If you have friends that normally don't like going out to Mexican restaurants because they're tired of the refried beans and the bad rice, tell them you've got something that is homemade, easy, and delicious. It's gonna change their mind. Now, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We've got some great things coming up in the new year, and some of them are so big I cannot wait to tell you, but I can't yet. So if you're not following us on Instagram or on Facebook, hey, guess what? You're missing out. Don't forget to subscribe to the videos, because as the new stuff comes up in the coming year, I wanna make sure you're the first to know about it, not the last. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Let's make a community out of this. I'm having a lot of fun. I hope you are. Now, I'm really stinking hungry. I'm gonna start eating. I'll see y'all later. So you stuck around. That is awesome. That means you wanna see how to make a homemade tortilla. And I told you it's not hard, and I really mean that. It's masa flour and water. So I'm gonna go ahead and put 1.5 cups of water in the microwave. I wanna get warm, but not boiling hot. And the one thing that you'll know about microwaving water is it'll never bubble unless there's something else in it. So I've added a teaspoon of olive oil and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. It's gonna flavor the masa a little bit more, but it also gives me the ability to watch the water and make sure I don't bring it to a boil before I add it to this. So I'm gonna go ahead, turn around, pop this in the microwave here real quick, and come back and do our flour. All right, while that's in the microwave, I've already got my first 1.5 cups of masa flour in here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get the last 1/2 cup. And if you remember, we want to use a knife to clear off any excess so we have a perfect measure. So it is quite literally 2 cups of masa flour, 1.5 cups of water, plus a little bit of olive oil and salt. Put it in here, mix it, pop a lid on it. 15 minutes later, we're able to make some tortillas. So I'm going to come back and mix that here in 1 second, and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, water's good and hot. It's not bubbling or boiling, so we know we're not going to scorch ourselves if we happen to put our hand in here, but why? Let's use this. So we're simply just stirring this mixture up. Looks super runny at first, and it will come together. So one of the reasons why we want to do this with very warm water and give it 15 minutes to rest is corn flour doesn't have any gluten in it. So unlike regular flour, there's really nothing to create this elasticity. So what we're trying to do is just really sort of wake up the proteins and the starches in the flour and give them time to kind of work together and create something that's nice and sticky. Otherwise, when you put it in there, it's gonna be like mashed potatoes and it's just gonna squirt out all over the place. Did I say squirt out? Yes, I did. So you'll notice it comes together really well. I've almost cleaned the entire bowl out with it. If it feels like it's a little too dry, add a tablespoon of water at a time. If it gets a little bit on the wet side, that's okay, because we're gonna put the lid on it, we're gonna let it rest for 15 minutes, and then we're gonna check it. So we can always adjust with a little bit more flour or water if we need to. Right now, this just needs to sit with a lid and hang out for 15 minutes. Okay, 15 minutes, the dough's still warm. It's very pliable. Again, if you have to add just a tablespoon of water at a time just to make sure it moves this well. So it'll make cracks and things like that, but they don't crumble or fall apart. Very reminiscent of the dough you used to play with as a kid. So something that I've always laughed at is when you start watching some competitions and people are making homemade tortillas. They'll pull off a ball, they'll roll it up, they'll put it in the tortilla press, then they'll do the next one and the next one. Well, guess what happens? You get tortillas from here to here to here to here to here. So you can never put a consistent product together. My thought is let's just roll these up into very large golf balls and make sure they're all the same size at the end. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll these, line them up down here on the counter, make sure they all look pretty good, and come back and I'm gonna press these puppies. All right, so we've turned the tortilla dough into nice little balls. So as you can tell, I've got 8 of them with a little extra left over. You are going to second guess yourself. You're like, well, this one needs a little bit. Well, take some off of here. You know what? At the end of the day, it's all gonna taste great. We're making enchiladas. We're gonna put some sauce on it. But if you start with something that's pretty uniform, then as you roll them, everything just kind of does the same thing. If we're making tacos, I'd probably have about 15 tortillas. This is much larger than what I would use for a taco. So 2 things I've done. I've laid out some plastic wrap over here, because as I create the tortilla, I'm gonna pop it onto the plastic wrap so that they don't stick to the counter. But I'm also going to use a storage bag instead of plastic wrap in my tortilla press. Thicker mill of plastic works a little bit better. And when you open and close in the press, you don't have to peel the plastic wrap off of the top or the bottom to get the tortilla off. If it sticks to it a little bit, you can just simply pull and put them onto your hand. So we're gonna go ahead, pop this in. Now you could start right in the middle. I'm going just a little bit closer to the hinge because as it closes, the hinge is gonna press and move more dough towards the rear. So we wanna start a little bit over here, pat it down, close it up, and that's it. There's a stop on here. So when you hit the stop, come off. And what you have is a beautiful tortilla. So we're just gonna go ahead and do a bunch of these here real quick, see you back in just a few, and then we can talk about where they go next. So you wanna see another reason why I like making homemade tortillas besides playing with the dough? Let's just say you make a mistake. You're too close to the crease, you do something silly. Right, you make one of those. Oops. Do over, just ball it up. Do it again. How many times do you get to do that in the kitchen? Look at those nice uniform sizes. All right, so in front of me, I'm preheating an electric griddle. And you're probably thinking, man, I remember my grandmother making pancakes on that thing. That's kind of the way I feel about it. It's very nostalgic. We didn't have one in my house as a kid because we really didn't have a lot. But friends would have them and their mom would say, hey, come over for pancakes, come over for eggs or whatever. And they'd always be cooking on these. So when I'm trying to cook tortillas and I want to do more than 1 or 2 at a time because pans are only about this big, you need something like this. So if you're thinking about kitchen electrics, because again, that's been a real feature this season, is trying to show you some different things. These are great. And the control for the temperature is super, super easy. So what I've done is I've put it up to 375 and I'm just backing it down to 350 because I want to get a nice golden hue on these corn tortillas, but I don't want to really put a char on them. I don't want to overcook them because they're going back on here when we actually make the enchiladas. So I'm going to go ahead and peel one up. Little sizzle. Little sizzle. This is good. All right. Spatula ready. What we're going to be looking for is some drying around the edges. You'll see some steam start coming up, and you can always sneak a little bit of a peek. See the steam? It's already working, but you don't want to do it too soon or you could crack the tortilla right down the middle. Because remember, there's no gluten. There's nothing to hold these together except for the proteins and the starches. So it's a little bit different. So take your time. So when you look at the bottom of them, there's a little bit of blistering. You can actually see some little bubbles kind of popping up in here, which is great. It's not like a pancake because it's not a thin batter. This is an actual dough, but you just have to keep checking until you kind of figure out your groove. The steam's still going. There's plenty of moisture in there. I am going to get a plate ready to put them in, actually 2 plates and a paper towel, and I'll explain that in just a second. So there's some cracking on top, which means they're steaming through. We're probably right at that point now where I want to go ahead and start to flip them. Got just a nice light golden color on there. We're going to go ahead and get these puppies flipped over. You'll notice that the steam starts to die down just a little bit, but that's okay. Because what'll happen when we take them off the griddle is they're going to go inside these 2 plates with the paper towel. They're going to hold their heat because it's a pretty dense dough. They're going to continue to steam each other. You'll actually see the paper towel get wet. So it is similar to the pancake in the fact that by putting them in here, they're going to stay warm, they're going to stay steamy. But that steaming process is a huge part of making a very pliable tortilla when you go to make your enchiladas. If it's rock hard like a crusty bread as you try to roll it, it's just going to come apart. We need these to be pliable and soft, and putting them in here to steam and finish is exactly what they need. So you'll see that when we pull them out of here later on. Right now, I'm going to focus on these babies and get them in here. So we just going to pull these off. Stack them up. Look how uniform they are. I'm telling you, there is something to be said for rolling everything out in advance and making sure your sizes are going to be right. I'm going to grab the last 4, get them cooked up, check back in with you here in just a second. All right, so 8 beautiful tortillas are resting in this little den of steam. And if you look, you can actually see all the moisture already building up just on the outside edge here. So, I mean, these things are really in like a tortilla sauna right now. How cool is that? So I'm going to save this because we're going to use it to actually make the enchiladas to warm up these beautiful tortillas. But this is the end of the bonus episode. I just wanted you to see how easy it is to make homemade tortillas. The bag of masa flour will cost you $5 or $6. The tortilla press will cost you between 10 and 15. But think about it. You could probably make 50 to 60 tortillas out of there. By the time you've done that, you've paid for the 2 of them, and the product you're going to give your family and friends is by far superior to what you're going to see in a package sitting on a shelf stable so that it doesn't spoil. If you make these fresh for your family, you've got about a week to eat them. Put them in a Ziploc bag, pop them in the refrigerator, but that's it. There's no preservatives, there's nothing artificial. Super, super easy, delicious homemade corn tortillas that you can take a lot of pride in putting in your recipe. So thanks a lot for hanging out with us. I hope you enjoyed our enchilada episode. We'll see you back here soon.